Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The sun dipped low over the small, close-knit community of Blackwood Pines, casting long shadows that danced along the quiet streets. On the surface, it was a town like any other, families picnicking in parks, children riding bikes, and neighbors exchanging pleasantries. Yet, beneath this facade of tranquility lay an ominous tension that no one dared to voice. The late autumn air began to chill as dusk settled in, leaving a thick fog to creep into alleys and hang over the lake that framed the town's eastern edge. That evening, a call of distress pierced the quiet, a frantic voice crackling through a police radio. Units responding to an abandoned vehicle at Maple Forest. Potential foul play. In the mind of Officer Jake Hartman, the echoes of ominous words clung like the mist that shrouded the area. He had patrolled Blackwood Pines for over a decade, believing he knew its heartbeat, the laughter of children, and the comforting scent of fresh laundry. But tonight was different. As he arrived at the site, red and blue lights pulsed in vibrant opposition against the white fog. Looking down at the vehicle, a nondescript sedan slightly elevated and on a subtle incline, he could feel the weight of something ominous resting upon the town. The doors hung ajar, hinting at a struggle. A swirl of fallen leaves moved with an unsettling breeze. The air grew heavy with the understanding that they were no longer merely dealing with a missing person. They were standing at the threshold of something darker. Graffiti of hardened metal and rust whispered of time gone by as Jake surveyed the scene, struggling to ignore the gnawing feeling that, for some, this night would mark the end of innocence in Blackwood Pines. The victim. As Officer Hartman leaned closer to the vehicle, a grim realization struck him. The car had been in the woods long enough to collect layers of fallen leaves and debris. Yet the interior bore signs of recent use. A stray purse lay on the passenger seat, its contents spilled across the leather. A broken compact mirror glimmered weakly beneath the passenger side light, and a crumpled photograph slipped out of pocket, two smiling faces against the backdrop of carnival lights. One was a young woman, her features delicate, framed by waves of dark hair. Kayla Simmons, Jake murmured, pulling out his radio. He needed to notify dispatch. The name echoed in his mind. Everyone in Blackwood Pines recognized her. A college student and hometown girl, Kayla was adored and well known. Many parents hoped their daughters would grow up to be just like her, vibrant, caring, and a serial volunteer. Yet beneath the town's surface of admiration lay whispers, trails of discontent nobody wanted to surface. Last week, Kayla had recently posted on social media, expressing her frustrations with a close friend who felt she was distancing herself. Concern had rippled through her circle, but they had brushed it aside, chalking it up to the drama often associated with young friendships. It was parental instinct to view the glass as half full. Nothing sinister could possibly brew in a town like Blackwood Pines. As darkness enveloped the forest, Jake felt a familiar sense of foreboding. He couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had happened tonight was the culmination of something buried long beneath the surface. The law would soon unravel Kayla's story, but he stared down at her photograph, realizing that beyond the official reports, it was a narrative that craved honor and closure. Determined, he glanced around, taking in the haunting stillness. The laughter that once echoed, lost amidst fear and uncertainty. The crime scene. As the evening settled deeper into night, the eerie ambience of the maple forest intensified. The chilling silence of the woods absorbed sounds amplifying the weight of the moment. He was no stranger to crime scenes, but the unease coiling in his gut was palpable. This felt personal, an intrusion into the heart of their community. The patrol officers cordoned off the area with bright yellow tape, a stark contrast to the soft browns and greens around them. Hartman waved to the forensic team arriving, their gear glinting ominously in the dim light. He recounted to the lead investigator everything he had observed: the position of the car, the purse, the photograph. Each detail mattered now more than ever. These would be the building blocks of a narrative leading to the truth. "Get the license plate checked," he directed, his voice crisp. "This is just a missing persons case anymore. It feels like something worse." The forensic specialists began their methodical search, tools in hand, sifting for fibers, fingerprints, anything that might link Kayla to this vehicle. The underbrush around the car, alive with rustling leaves. As Hartman peered further into the car interior, his attention was drawn to the driver's side door, which swung slightly ajar. Flashes of the community flooded his memory. Kayla, a bright student who volunteered at the local youth center, had discussions about future aspirations with anyone who would listen. Now, those dreams seemed lost in the haze of mystery hovering above the crime scene. A distant snap of a twig jolted Hartman from his thoughts. He turned just in time to see a glint of something metallic half buried in the soil, just beyond the reach of the car's frame. Heart-pounding, he knelt, brushing leaves aside to reveal a silver bracelet adorned with charms, a gift from her best friend for her last birthday. Reality settled over him. They were being pulled deeper into a convoluted web of lies and betrayals, and the path to discovering what happened to Kayla Simmons had begun to unfurl, revealing darkened threads interwoven into the fabric of their tight-knit community. The early investigation. The following morning, a heavy fog clung to Blackwood Pines, as if the town itself mourned the loss of one of its own. Officer Hartman stood under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the precinct, flipping through the sheets of Kayla's files spread out in front of him. Every detail, every friend, and every place she had been in the past month was under scrutiny. As the sun began to rise, a palpable tension filled the air. The townspeople were already waking, whispering fears behind closed doors. Hartman knew they would demand answers. He reached out to the last person who had seen Kayla alive, her roommate, Emily. Sitting across from Hartman at the small interrogation table, Emily's hands fidgeted nervously, twisting a strand of hair as she avoided eye contact. "I didn't think she would ever really go missing," she stammered, her voice quivering. "Kayla just disappeared. She mentioned she was going to the lake to think. But I thought it was just her being dramatic." Hartman leaned forward, noting the shadows under Emily's eyes, a damaged expression that suggested sleepless nights. "What do you mean by being dramatic? Did she seem scared or concerned about something?" Emily bit her lip, pausing to collect her thoughts. There was a rumor about some guy she met at a party. They were texting a lot. She seemed excited, but I think she started to feel uneasy. I told her it wasn't worth it, but she liked the thrill. The officer's pen hovered over the page. "Do you know his name?" Something flickered behind Emily's eyes, a mix of fear and hesitation. I think it was Ben. I can't be sure. She never brought him around. Hartman noted the detail, and before concluding the session, he assured Emily of their commitment to find Kayla. Can you think of anyone else who might have had an issue with her? Emily shook her head fervently, but the glint of doubt lingered. Hartman left the precinct that afternoon with a face full of questions, aware that secrets in Blackwood Pines could hide in plain sight. Beyond Emily's nervous demeanor, he felt the earth shifting beneath his feet. A plea for truth echoed from the Wisconsin woods, promising that Kayla's case would not remain dormant long. The dead ends. Days passed, morphing into weeks, and the investigation into Kayla Simmons took on the weight of an anchor dragging through murky waters. Officer Hartman's desk became cluttered with leads that twisted into ambiguous knots. The community's interest turned to anxiety as the media camped outside, broadcasting their fears to the world. Yet inside the precinct, tangible progress felt like an elusive dream. Hartman reviewed the interview with Emily a second time, scanning for clues that felt hidden between the lines. Ben's name echoed like a haunting refrain. Digging deeper, he reached out to local colleges and social media platforms, combing through digital imprints of Kayla and this mysterious man. But each inquiry that beckoned hope collapsed inward, closing off with a sense of futility. Look, I'm just saying, his partner, Officer Lily Nguyen, said as she rifled through her own reports at the desk beside him. I spoke to a few people at the party. No one seems to know a Ben, and Kayla's vibe was well. Her vibe didn't suggest anything sinister. Hartman leaned back, rubbing his temples. That's the problem. Everyone loved her, a perfect girl in a perfect town. No one wants to imagine that anything bad could happen. 2 more interviews yielded little more than whispers of sorrow and support, and the police search teams, turning over every possible lead, came back empty-handed. A slight ping on the radar suggested a distant sighting of Kayla's car, but it was dismissed a rumor among drunken high schoolers. As frustration mounted, the investigation turned, seemingly pivoting in circles. The Zodiac pale blue bracelet he had discovered now viewed within the family's direction of hope exposed fissures in connections made. Everyone began to ponder shifts toward conflict, wondering who might have possessed it last. The officers had pursued this lead, but Kayla's mother, overcome by grief, spiraled into despair, convinced that the world was closing around her. At a gathering destined to lift spirits, a candlelight vigil was scheduled to remember Kayla. As families shared their heartache and created a tapestry of remembrances around flickering flames, Officer Hartman felt a tightening in his chest, a reminder that beyond these dead ends lay a silent desperation for closure swirling painfully through the fog of Blackwood Pines. A break in the case. A cool breeze swept through Blackwood Pines the morning after the candlelit vigil, carrying whispers of hope mixed with lingering despair. Officer Hartman stood at his desk, coffee in hand, knowing that the weight of the past weeks rested heavily on the community's shoulders. Yet, in the depths of that somber morning, a serendipitous call rang through the precinct, shattering the silence that enveloped them. Officer Hartman. The voice crackled on the other end, urgent and tinged with hesitation. We have a lead regarding the missing girl. A delivery driver reported seeing her car parked near the trailhead a couple of nights ago. He mentioned a man lingering nearby. Hartman's heart quickened. Did he get a description? Sort of a shadowy figure. He wasn't sure, but there was something off about him. He said a woman was nearby, trying to signal for help. Given little time to waste, Hartman grabbed his jacket and motioned for Officer Nguyen. The two sped through town toward the trailhead, the memories of Kayla flickering like fleeting shadows on the road ahead. They arrived at the trailhead, where the driver claimed to have seen the vehicle. The woods loomed ominously, but this time, there was a spark of purpose driving them forward. They scoured the area, eyes keen, scouring every underbrush and shadowy crevice. Just beyond the parking area, lines of yellow tape now danced in the wind. Hartman's gut clenched. They had relied on this area for the vast searches before, and now was the moment that could bring clarity. As they navigated further along the well-trodden path, a glimmer caught Hartman's eye, a small object nestled among the fallen leaves. He bent down and unearthed it, revealing an iridescent phone case adorned with Kayla's name, a prized possession from her 21st birthday. "Is this..." Nguyen breathed, realizing the implications. "If we can find the phone, there might be leads inside." The discovery ignited a wave of determination. The case gave birth to new possibilities, threads of hope weaving through the despair that had plagued the investigation. Hartman's thoughts raced. If they could find Kayla's phone, it might reveal messages, calls, or even a crucial clue that could redirect the case entirely. As they moved forward, they were no longer carrying the weight of uncertainty. Urgency surged within them, the feeling that, at long last, something was shifting in Blackwood Pines. The suspect. The discovery of Kayla's phone case ignited a fire within Officer Hartman and his team, propelling them into a whirlwind of urgency focused on uncovering the truth. It wasn't just the phone they hoped to recover. It was the bridge to understanding what had transpired that fateful night. Following a hasty but organized search of the remains of the trail, the team soon uncovered evidence of cell phone activity in the area. With every passing hour, the tension built, culminating in a small break when they pinpointed the faint trail of digital signals leading into a nearby cabin, deep within the forest. Hartman arrived at the cabin with Nguyen alongside him, the anticipation prickling at his skin. The aging wooden structure appeared innocuous, but the way the shadows hung like specters suggested... He raised his flashlight, illuminating the peeling paint of the front door, an old latch that spoke of neglect and secrets. On 3, he indicated, feeling the weight of the moment. They kicked the door in, finding themselves standing in a dimly lit living space, cluttered and chaotic. Boards creaked underfoot, but the musty, stale air was punctuated by the scent of something deeper: fear, anger, or perhaps desperation. "Check here," Nguyen directed as she moved toward a set of disheveled bags leaning against the wall. Hartman's gaze drifted across the room, resting on an old couch beside the window view of the trail, barely visible through the dense foliage. And then from the corner, a shadow slid into view. A tall figure emerged from the darkness bin. The last name floated through Hartman's mind, the name echoing with each heartbeat. "What are you doing here?" Ben asked, an edge of nervousness lacing his voice, eyes darting in every direction. "Where's Kayla?" Hartman's voice was sharp, firm. And for a moment, surprised confusion crossed Ben's face before he obscured it with a wall of anger. "I don't know what you're talking about," he snapped, folding his arms defensively. Nguyen moved closer, her voice steady. "We found Kayla's phone case at the trail. A delivery driver mentioned seeing a man fitting your description in the area." Ben inhaled sharply, the color draining from his face. You've got it all wrong. I didn't hurt her. The denial hung in the air thick and heavy. Hartman and Nguyen exchanged a glance, aware that their instincts were aligning. Ben was hiding something. Just beneath the surface of his panic lay a storm of secrets. "Let's step outside," Hartman suggested, leading Ben into the warmth of daylight-illuminated steps. The woods seemed to hush around them, the trees guardians to choices made in silence. With each question, more threads unraveled, a pattern emerging. A connection between him and Kayla, woven in both light and shadow. As they stared into each other's eyes, Hartman couldn't shake the sense that they were on the brink of revealing a truth that would shatter Blackwood Pines forever. The path ahead was dangerous, but they needed to follow it, for Kayla's sake. The trial, months dragged on, transforming the once tranquil Blackwood Pines into a cacophony of tension and division. The town had become a backdrop for whispers of mistrust. All eyes focused sharply on the upcoming trial of Ben Sutherland. The young man stood accused of kidnapping, and ultimately, the death of Kayla Simmons, a weighty cloud that loomed over the courthouse as the day of reckoning approached. Hartman had witnessed the unraveling of so many lives, but this trial was different. It felt personal. He had seen Kayla's mother in the courtroom, her eyes hollow, every glimmer of hope eclipsed by grief. Now the room buzzed with anticipation as the prosecutor detailed the circumstances leading up to Kayla's disappearance, each word turning the air bitter, suffocating. "Witnesses have established a timeline," the prosecutor began, his voice. "We have evidence that places Ben at the crime scene, admitting to having interactions with Kayla in the days prior to her disappearance." He gestured toward Ben, seated at the defendant's table, now a shadow of the excited young man seen at the park. The defense attorney, a local figure with polished rhetoric and charisma, countered with fervor. "Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution's case is built upon speculation. There is no hard evidence linking my client to the alleged crime." Hartman could feel the collective breath of the audience tighten. He shifted in his seat, recalling the moment when they found Kayla's phone and the tangled secrets that led to this moment. The evidence was not as clear-cut as it appeared. The courtroom pulsated with emotions as witnesses spoke. Emily, Kayla's roommate, recalled the last days leading up to the tragedy, her voice cracking with the burden of what she could not protect. Each testimony resonated like echoes of sorrow, painting a portrait of a vibrant life extinguished far too soon. Moments turned into days, and with every ounce of evidence presented, the weight of the jury's decision pressed down heavily. Hartman remembered each detail on messages Kayla sent to friends, the discovery of her belongings, the psychological profile of Ben that revealed insecurities and possessiveness. Finally, closing arguments unfurled like the calm before a storm. Ben's defense claimed he was the scapegoat, framing his relationship with Kayla in desperate terms. They argued for his innocence, a plea that struck the air with desperation. But the collective pulse of the courtroom vibrated with anger and sadness. As the jury filed out of the room, Hartman's heart raced, the tension stirring within him. Hours slipped into eternity until the door swung open again. The jurors' faces reflecting a mixture of resolve. Their decision would sculpt the future of Blackwood Pines. "Verdict." The foreman spoke with measured gravity. "We find the defendant, Benjamin Sutherland, guilty on all counts." The words hung in the air, a collective gasp escaping from the courtroom spectators. Relief mixed with grief settled softly over those who loved Kayla. As tears streamed down Kayla's mother's face, Hartman felt the familiar weight lift ever so slightly. Justice had been served, but the scars remained, woven into the very fabric of Blackwood Pines. Though it was a long road to healing, they would carry Kayla's memory forward through the joys and the lingering shadows. Her light would never fade. The aftermath. The days following the trial were a blur of emotions for Blackwood Pines. The town had shifted from the throes of panic to a wary silence, sensing that the landscape between familiar streets now bore a fresh layer of grief. Kayla's name echoed in conversations, a lament for a bright life extinguished too soon. Officer Hartman found himself walking those same streets daily, feeling the pulse of a community that was still reeling. Many sought solace in shared memories, gathering at the local cafe where Kayla had spent countless afternoons sipping coffee with friends, laughter bright against the backdrop of an increasingly somber town. But the laughter had faded into tentative whispers, a mark left by her absence that would linger forever. At the center of the town square, the townspeople began constructing a small memorial, filling it with photographs and flowers, each token a testament to a life once filled with promise. Hartman visited often to share in the collective mourning, standing before the small shrine where Kayla's photograph, the same one he had seen in her car, was now surrounded by candles that flickered against the chill in the air. Several weeks later, during a community meeting called to address the trial's ramifications, an air of uncertainty swirled around the gathered residents. Parents spoke up, anxieties spilling forth about their children's safety, and the fragility of trust shattered within their tight-knit town. Hartman understood their fears. He had lost that sense of invulnerability they all once shared. Nothing would remain untouched after such tragedy. Kayla's legacy must be a reminder, Hartman spoke at the meeting, his voice strong yet gentle. We need to come together not just to mourn, but to protect our children. We must create safe spaces for openness and honesty. The room fell into a heavy silence, each person weighing his words, startlingly aware that education and awareness were the walls they needed to build against the threat of darkness. Posters began appearing around town, promoting self-defense classes and community outreach programs aimed at recognizing unhealthy relationships. Conversations shifted. Parents began opening dialogues with their kids. Hartman could see the spark of proactive change flickering within the community, an evolution of resilience born from anguish. But he also saw the shadows of doubt that lingered in the eyes of Kayla's mother, who frequented the memorial, keeping her daughter's spirit alive. Hartman approached her one afternoon, finding her clasping a wilted flower with tears brimming in her eyes. Every day is a struggle, she admitted, voice shaky. But I need to believe Kayla can still make a difference. Hartman nodded, unable to find words that wouldn't ring hollow. But in that shared silence swirled a mutual understanding, a commitment to honoring Kayla, not just through grief, but through growth. As seasons changed in Blackwood Pines, the town slowly began to rebuild. Kayla's spirit thrived in every moment of authenticity shared between its residents. Though scars remained, echoes of joy called around the tragedy that had once tightly bound their lives, offering the promise that love, even born from loss, could forge a resilient community, forever intertwined with the memory of a girl who touched each soul in her wake. Reflection. Months later, as the leaves began to unfurl in early spring, Officer Hartman found himself wandering once more through the quiet streets of Blackwood Pines. It had been a turbulent journey for the community. woven with the threads of loss, resilience, and newfound understanding. As he walked past the small memorial honoring Kayla, he could feel a sense of poignant reflection settling upon. Each candle left behind flickered against the soft breeze like memories stirring in the depths of his heart. He recalled the nights spent following leads, searching for answers amidst uncertainty, and the burden of witnessing the raw impact of grief on Kayla's family and friends. The ache of loss still resonated deeply within the town, yet glimmers of hope emerged. The recent community gatherings filled with laughter and tears spoke of healing as they shared stories of Kayla's spirit. They celebrated her life with a festival in her honor, transforming their sorrow into something beautiful. The old fears of what could not be controlled morphed into a renewed commitment to protect one another, embracing open communication and vigilance. Standing before the memorial, Artman took a moment to reflect on the fragility of life and the ways in which tragedy had altered their lives. He recognized that the path to healing would be long and often difficult, but it was a necessary journey. Blackwood Pines was forever changed. Their scars would serve not just as reminders of pain, but as testaments to the enduring spirit of love and community that bound them together. Kayla would remain eternally vibrant in their lives, an indelible presence that would guide them forward, lighting the way as they navigated the complexities of their shared existence.